So it's the fourth set of this week's show, and that means it's time for this week's Artist Focus. This week, we have a very special Artist Focus, and he's actually on the line with us right here, so I'll have him introduce himself.
Hey people, my name's Francesco Tallarico. I produce music under the name Shifting Black.
If you were to try to describe some of the music you make, what kind of a sound world do you kind of occupy?
Well, I mean, I've been kind of all over the place in the past, but the whole Shifting Black project came about because I was trying to find something with a more narrow scope. I make, like, as you just heard, I sent you a little demo of a little disco tune that I'm working on, and I come from a hip-hop background originally, but my passion has become sound design and bass music, and so really the whole Shifting Black moniker came from me just trying to find a name that was evocative of visually how I saw my sound, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, actually.
It might be a little too poetic or whatever, but I was just on my porch one day thinking about, because I've been trying to think of names since forever and I can never settle on one. So finally I was just like, well, if I was going to see something visually that was going to, represent the brand, then I'd kind of want it to be dark. I'm not like one of those big colorful people. If you've ever met me, I noticed pretty quickly that I tend to wear all black all the time, just out of simplicity's sake. And that imagery just kind of popped into my head, and I was like, I'd kind of want like a monochrome palette, but I'd want a lot of movement in the music and in the visuals, but I'd also want it to be dark and simplistic and black. And I was like, oh, well, Shifting Black. Then it worked out, and I already had that Harbinger EP sitting on the shelf, so I kind of had an idea of what the project sounded like, and it just kind of worked. So from there, I'm kind of trying to narrow the music that I produce down to that aesthetic, just one aesthetic rather than having it all over the place. Not to say that I won't make other music and release it under Shifting Black. I'll probably, like, for example, with that disco tune, I'll probably finish it and then do a VIP for Shifting Black that's more in line with that creative direction.
That totally makes sense. I mean, everyone's got sort of this creative freedom when it comes to making music, but to actually narrow the focus down to like, okay, well, what's like your mainstay? What's your territory?
Nowadays, you have every single tool in the world at your disposal all the time, and you can just get crushed by the paradox of choice. You really, I don't think there's anybody out there right now that's successful in what they're doing musically that hasn't aggressively limited themselves to a sound or an aesthetic or a scene. There's definitely artists out there that are all over the place, but that's their choice. And I think that you would never mistake an unfocused artist for a focused artist. Deadmau5 he got famous doing exactly one thing over and over again, but he did it better than anybody else. Now that he's been successful in doing that, he's free to break away from that sound, and it pisses some people off, but now you can see he's doing hip hop and breaks and all of this weird atmospheric music. So I think if you're gonna try and kick off a project, you kind of have to have something in mind.
Yeah, at least something to stay focused. It's weird that when you actually limit yourself and throw restrictions on, that suddenly nothing's confusing. It just makes sense of how to go about making a project, because there really is unlimited amount of choice.
Yeah, I mean, a big tip for anybody who's really struggling with that is take your most successful song, whatever piece of music you think that you've done that best represents what you want to continue doing. Take your project file, delete everything out of the project file, but make sure that you save your samples and you save your presets and everything that you made for that project, and essentially start over again from scratch with the same sounds and the same drums and everything, and just redo it and do a completely new track. Make sure that you are not getting lazy, but if something works, don't change it. Find something else to push yourself on. If your sound design's already good and you're really happy with how it's sounding and you think it represents you, then focus on writing better songs. Just try and push yourself on your weakest point, and I think that's going to help you be a better artist.
Yeah, that's a fantastic tip. So I guess to talk a little bit more technicals for a second, what kind of tools do you use to make the magic of Shifting Black happen?
I think it's deceptively simple. A lot of those sounds, when I hear them back and I go like, oh shit, that was awesome, that came from usually a very simple place. Like I took, on my first EP, almost all the growl sounds that I put on there came from kick drums that that I had this little like Korg Volca Beats, tiny little drum machine, and I was running it through my pedals actually, because I used to play guitar a lot, and I have this little pedal board of distortion units. It's almost all distortion because that's what I was into. And I just spent a couple of days just running drum machines through there and just trying to mangle them as much as I could. And then that was a starting point. And then I do a lot of time stretching. I wish I could tell you there was some kind of to what I was doing, but generally I start from a very simple input. It could just be like a sine wave wobble, or it could be a drone. And then I just sit there and I mess the sound up over and over again. Tons of compression. In between those compression steps, I'll be doing a lot of filtering. So I'll use like really aggressive filters, like a really steep high pass, low pass filters, and a lot of band pass filters and a lot of band reject filters to cut and shape sounds. And then if you're familiar with what I'm talking about, then you'll know that if you take a band pass and you run it over something that had a lot of frequency content, you've lost a lot of volume. So what I'll do is I'll just cut movements out of the sound and then compress the hell out of them. So that comes from the like Euro dubstep community, cone sound and all that. Like, that's mostly just with a lot of compression on it.
As opposed to working sort of intimately with the synthesis aspect, to instead take something, as you said, very simple, but then turn it into something completely different. It reminds me of, I think it might have been Flux Pavilion. Someone had said that in this age, you can almost take a starting sound and turn it into any other sound you want. Like, digital technology is just there and it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're getting all of your bass sounds directly from the synthesizer, it's going to end up sounding like a preset, even if it's not a preset. I mean, you might have made that growl from scratch, but anybody else could reach that same conclusion with that synthesizer, or at least something really approximate to it. In the bass music realm now, everybody latched on to Serum when it came out, same way that they did with Massive, and they pushed the synth as far as I think it will go. And if you want to sound unique, then you have to be outside of the box. You have, well, I mean, thinking outside of the box, and can't do that using the same tools as everybody else. I mean, I found myself, once you do master whatever it is that you're working on, I highly encourage everybody to master the simple tools. You need to know exactly how Serum works inside and out if you're going to make good basses with Serum. But if you think that you're going to get a sound that no one's made before using the exact same tool that everybody else is using, I just don't think that we're there anymore. I think that it's 2017. Everybody has access, and just, you know, by sheer numbers, it's almost impossible that you're going to be making really cutting edge sounds without doing something. It can really be anything. If you look at somebody like Quix, you know, kind of shattered a genre with his own very simple sound. It's how he incorporated that one sound into his entire mix down. If it sounds good, then you're doing it right. And a lot of the things that I've been doing recently are so counter to everything that I was taught. I'm doing things that like I would have been embarrassed to show myself 5 years ago, cranking the reverb to like 0 dB so the reverb is as loud as the bass. But then you compensate, and that's where you get a new sound.
Oh, exactly. If anyone's actually been through the ropes of learning music theory, one of the things you eventually pick up is you learn all these rules for how to write a song, but then at a point you start breaking them. Because that's when you start getting interesting compositions. So it really is mastering your basic skill set and having that foundation to then know how to manipulate it properly. So I guess to kind of to move forward here, I really want to talk about some of your recent work, specifically the 600 Followers EP.
Yeah, my 5/600 follower. Yeah.
Yeah, numbers are weird.
I lost 30 followers literally within 10 seconds of posting that EP.
No.
And so all of a sudden I went from 600 to like 570 something, and I was like, oh well, okay, well hopefully I make that back at some point, because otherwise I look like an idiot.
Oh, probably. But I want to talk about specifically the song Stone Eater. It really got to me when I was listening to it, and I was kind of wondering about the creative process, maybe behind the track or just behind the whole 600 Followers EP.
Well, you know, I did Leviathan first. And, you know, apologies to everybody for my hokey song names. I don't really think too much about it. But, I mean, Leviathan Leviathan was an experiment with reverb, and I really liked that song, but I felt that it could be better. So I did exactly what I said for people to do before, and I deleted everything out of the project, and I made new bass sounds for it and kept the same idea behind the track. So if you listen to both of them back to back, you'll notice that they're very similar but different, I think, in their emotional content, if there is any. And Stone Eater was just a more like relaxed one. I said, hey, like I think this whole vibe would be better just like a little bit slower and with more of an atmospheric feel to it. I mean, Leviathan was this like hard hitting. I wanted everything to just like pop and use all that negative space, fill it with reverb, but also have a bunch of negative space in the arrangement because there's really not a lot going on there. Stone Eater was more layered, but really those two kind of just came together back to back, and I really liked how it was sounding, so I didn't want to just move on to a new sound right away.
Sweet. So where can people go if they want more on Shifting Black?
Well, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, but I'm really not good at the whole social media thing. I barely use it myself. I think I have like 100 friends on Facebook or something like that. I just don't like it. I promise, if you're out there and you want to contact me, I'm not going to pull a Space Laces and not reply to anybody for like 4 years and just disappear. I mean, if you message me on Facebook, I will reply 100% of the time. I'm always there. I love hearing from people on SoundCloud. Every time I find somebody whose music I really like, I reach out immediately and let them know. Most people don't respond because it's social media and everybody's jaded, but I really do like making those connections and talking shop with people. But mainly Facebook, SoundCloud, that's the best way, I think, for any artist right now. I'm a little bit sad to hear that SoundCloud may be going down the tubes. If you are not familiar with that and you're a SoundCloud artist, then look into it, because you need to start moving whoever you are in contact with onto Facebook or onto Bandcamp or some other platform that's a little bit more stable. But as it stands right now, I love SoundCloud. I think it's a great platform.
Yeah, for sure. So you can definitely check that out. The SoundCloud link there was just Shifting Black, one word, all lowercase. Really wanted to thank you for actually coming on. I really appreciate you finding some time in your travels to quickly get a quick interview in.
Hey, thank you, man. I hope everything was to your satisfaction here. I'm glad that I could find some Wi-Fi here at Grandma's house.
I'm kind of glad you were able to as well, because that's definitely great stuff to hear. I really love this guy's work, and I want to start off with the track